This is James Faris, editor of the Madison Business Review, talking with Ryan Alessi, an assistant professor in JMU's School of Media Arts and Design, about the state of the media industry, especially heading into the 2020 presidential election. We're here talking in Harrison Hall, 6 feet apart with masks on, as is the standard these days. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, James.
It's my pleasure. So, we know that just around the corner is a presidential election with massive implications going forward, and it appears to be neck and neck as of this point. How, in your view, has the media done in covering the election so far, and how could it possibly improve?
Well, this election season, unlike in 2016, I think the media was much more prepared for fact-checking, especially fact-checking in real time. And we've seen with the rise of QAnon, a lot of these conspiracy theories and a lot of this fake fiction that's passing as news in some areas. And so the media's ability to get out correct information and fact check that, whether it's coming from candidates or coming from dark corners of the internet, that's so essential because people can't make informed decisions without having the actual facts. And I think that's one thing that it will be a continued challenge, but I'm pleased to see media outlets really aggressively trying to combat that.
Absolutely. And in 2016, so much in the world went completely upside down in terms of racial unrest, in terms of political unrest, and political tensions that we really haven't seen, at least I know growing up, with Obama-McCain, Obama-Romney. There was disagreement for sure, but it didn't have the hate and the vitriol behind it that we saw coming from the left and coming from the right. So I do think the media industry, like you said, was unprepared. Hopefully it's better prepared going forward. But in your view, I know this is something you've studied and thought about a lot, but what happened to the media in 2016? Where did it succeed and where did it fail and fall short? And I would love to know what you think is different about this election in particular.
In 2016, the media rightly took a lot of criticism for saying, hey, you as the media said Hillary Clinton was going to win. And I think there was a disconnect between what the polls actually do and what people perceived polls to be. And the media did a kind of a poor job of describing that. Polls are snapshots in time. They're not meant to be predictive. Polls are not crystal balls. But a lot of the media coverage about the polls all the way along was Hillary Clinton is running away with it. Hillary Clinton's got this huge lead. And there's a couple things. First, we don't in this country decide the presidential election by total votes cast, by the popular vote. We decide it by the Electoral College, which is decided on a state-by-state basis. And so the polling wasn't really wrong in that Hillary Clinton did win by almost 4 points in the popular vote. Where the polling failed was it wasn't really giving us an accurate view of what the race is decided by. It's kind of like saying, here's who's winning a baseball game based on how many hits they have as opposed to how many runs. So that's the first thing that I think the media kind of learned from that. And we're talking about news outlets here. And some of those outlets failed to really pick up on one of those things that you just talked about, James, and that's this hyper-partisanship. And that's what requires old school, get out there, gumshoe reporting, go out to different communities, find out what people are really thinking, find out how deeply they feel about their party or their candidate. And they might have been able to see that there were a lot of people who were resistant to either facts or information about the other side because they feel so much loyalty to their side. I think if there's a third kind of lesson to be learned out of 2016, it's not necessarily a failure of the media, but I think we saw what the effects are of these communities who have lost their local news outlets, particularly newspapers. Because if people are relying on getting all their information from Facebook or Twitter or these internet sites that aren't meant to be news, that some of them are put up as actual satire or even fake news just to get clicks. If people are getting their information from that, they can't be making informed decisions. So I think those were kind of, for me, those were the three big takeaways of where we as a country needed to take stock of media.
Absolutely. And it's so important to get your perspective on this in particular, because I know you've worked to start the Citizen, which is an online independent news site for Harrisonburg. And not only are you a professor who works to teach students here at JMU, but you are very much invested in local news. So I'd love if you can plug the Citizen and tell me a little bit what it's about and how it's worked to combat I guess, fake news and biased news and inaccurate reporting and being an independent source for news in Harrisonburg.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to make that plug, James. I appreciate that. I believe so strongly in having a vibrant local news ecosystem. And that doesn't mean just having a paper or just having a television station. You know, the community of Harrisonburg is really lucky to have multiple outlets. An NPR affiliate, the television station, the Daily News Record, the newspaper. But the Citizen, we wanted to provide a little bit more depth to those issues and political stories and just what's going on in the community. And so the way I kind of describe it is it's like Harrisonburg's version of Time magazine ripped up over 5 days, where we're only publishing one story a day, but it's going to be a little bit deeper. It's going to be maybe more image driven some days, maybe more an in-depth personal story about the effect of an issue. And the other thing we're trying to do is we're trying to experiment with storytelling and ways to increase civic engagement. So we're partnering this fall for the fall election with Professor Kara Dillard here at JMU and Caitlin Waltemeyer, a student and the editor of The Breeze here at JMU. They're doing a project about deliberative forums where people who are vastly on different sides of the political spectrum and disagree about issues are brought together on an issue where they're given the same facts and background and then are encouraged to find common ground. To start bridging this deep divide and this division that hyperpartisanship has caused. So that's one of the ways that I think a vibrant ecosystem of news can help the community.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for sharing on that. And for those who are interested to check out the Citizen's content, that's hbergcitizen.com. So thank you so much for that. And shifting gears back to the election, I guess, but more broadly, just trust in the media in general. I hear people say, when I chose journalism, there were a lot of people, family, friends, a lot of people said that's great, but some were like, well, I hope you're one of the good journalists. I hope you're one of the honest journalists. And I think a lot of journalists have to straddle a line between, the media has failed in certain ways. It has mishandled certain issues, certainly. Americans' trust in the media, last time I checked, was right around 30%. It's one of the least trusted institutions, especially in recent years. And I must note, it's far lower among those on the right. Conservatives often distrust the media for what they believe is a lack of consistency, fairness, and even a lack of ethics, which is very sad. What's your response to this? And do you think some of the conservatives on the right may even have a point where the media has fallen short?
Yeah, I think that's a huge issue facing the media, but I don't know that it's just limited to those on the right. I think there's a lot going on in that question. There's a lot of distrust, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of misinformation all the way around. And I'm curious, because I hear the same thing about, hey, I hope you're one of the good journalists. Yep. Do you get when you get asked that, do you get the sense that they're asking about whether you're ethical and honest and following kind of traditional journalism approaches, or do you get the feeling that they're asking, hey, are you one of the good journalists? Are you on my side?
I definitely think it's the latter. It might be a bit of the former in terms of I hope you're ethical. I honestly hope, I don't care about any person's politics. I hope ethics. I'm in a media ethics course with Professor Grunman right now, and we're learning about what it means to be ethical and what practices to hold, and I hope everyone follows those. I know that may not always be the case, but yeah, I do absolutely think it's, in America, we love sports and we love cheering for certain teams, and I almost I absolutely get that sense in politics. It's very much, the red pom-poms and the blue pom-poms, and it's very much picking sides, and it's very much, I hope you're on my side, like nudge, nudge. And it's scary and troubling for me. But to your question, I absolutely get the sense that it's not only partisan and polarized, but it is very much picking sides. So another discouraging sign for me.
I get that sense a lot too, and kind of my answer to it is hey, actually, I am not on your team or the other team. I'm an ump. I'm a referee. I shouldn't be rooting for one of the teams or the other. I should be calling fouls or penalties or whatever you want to call it, or calling a foul ball, balls and strikes on both sides, so that we all as a participants in democracy have an idea of what's true, what's false, what's a lie, what's a true statement, what's actually happening and what we should be concerned about, and what is actual fake news. So, because if we don't have a grasp on that, to mix my metaphors now, it's kind of like flying a plane without an altimeter. And, if you don't have the altimeter telling you where you are, you can easily get in that spiral and fail to see where the horizon is. And we gotta know where that is in order to make decisions about who to have represent us in government, or what to debate at our local city council.
Absolutely. And something I saw over the summer that really caught my eye is Ryan Parkhurst, another assistant professor here at the School of Media Arts and Design, published a Medium blog post, and he said, I am not the media, I am a journalist. And I think that even the term the mainstream media, I think a lot of people tend to lump all journalists into one group and one category, and it's a homogenous group, and you're a journalist, so you're them. I don't like how the media covered this, so you. I think there's a lot, unfortunately, of misunderstanding. So I love the efforts that the Citizen is going to try and combat that and combat differences. So I would love to know now about you, a little bit about your background, what made you want to get into journalism, and what you like most about teaching journalism students here at JMU. And I know the news industry has changed a lot since you've entered it. I'd love to know what you've seen some of the shifts being.
Well, I got into journalism in college, and I knew a lot as a journalism consumer, because my family subscribed to the Baltimore Sun, and I grew up, first reading the sports pages and the comics, and eventually, the front page, and so I knew about journalism as a consumer, but then it wasn't until I started practicing it as a college journalist and then getting internships that I thought, this is just such an amazing opportunity, because no day is ever the same. No story is ever the same. The people that I got exposed to and were able to interview and ask sometimes tough questions to, that was an amazing opportunity for somebody. And right out of college, having the responsibility of covering the September 11th attacks, and then going across the country to find out how that affected communities, to covering Congress, to then being able to cover presidential races later on in my career, vice presidential debate, presidential conventions, the nominating conventions, the NCAA tournament in 2013. Getting to be there for these historic opportunities and getting paid for it. If you're getting into journalism to be rich, you've made a strategic error. However, if you're getting into journalism to have a rich life and career and be exposed to things and be able to record history and be able to be part of history in that way and write the first draft of it, there is nothing more rewarding. And so I don't regret my decision to get into journalism one single day. In fact, I can't quit it. As you notice, I'm still doing it. So I just, I can't quit you in journalism. So I tell my students that even though the industry is changing, and there are some transitions where media organizations aren't surviving, that's always been the case. But we're going through that transition, and there will always be a role and a need for journalists in a vibrant democracy.
Absolutely. And even though I think, as far as what's changing in the news industry, I think what's changing is how people are getting their news. But as you would probably agree, the demand for information has never been higher. People need and crave information, via social media and via so many platforms. It might not be coming as much through the print medium anymore, but it certainly is an insatiable demand across the world for information.
And you're so right. And not just information, but quality information and great stories. Well-told stories. I mean, the Condé Nast, the magazine company, they now have a production arm to produce movies and television shows based on the journalism and the great stories that their magazine journalists are telling. So you're exactly right.
Absolutely. And I think people are additionally craving podcasts and video content more, not just because of social media, but what is Netflix? Netflix is stories. And it is in that video format, but people love documentaries, they love fiction, they love all types of movies and TV shows about every subject. People love, it's wired deep within human beings to want stories. So I absolutely am, I don't know how optimistic I am currently about the state of the media industry, especially financially, which is what we'll shift into now, but I am very glad about my choice to cover the news and break news, especially for me in the business world, is what I want to get into. And there is a business side to the media industry. There are financial difficulties. Before the coronavirus pandemic, our unemployment rate was near a 50-year low at 3.5%. Yet media companies, by and large, were still cutting jobs. There were some areas of growth, but there were layoffs and furloughs and job insecurity, and it's, for me and a lot of my peers, it's a scary time to be getting into the journalism industry. Now, from what you've said, I'm confident that you would choose journalism again. I know you believe in that, but I'd love to know what advice you would give to journalism students and recent graduates who are stepping into this brave new world where there is no job security. You are not getting probably financial security, at least for a long time, and it's a tough world out there. So how have you advised students, and how would you advise current JMU students and recent graduates?
That's a great question, and I'm an optimist by nature, but I would actually say that there are so many more opportunities in this challenging time, especially for people coming through the School of Media Arts here at JMU. Because first of all, you don't have to think too hard about being able to learn different platforms, because you get that in this program. And doing what you're doing, James, by reporting on multiple platforms, doing this as a podcast, writing stories, working with Breeze TV, and doing that on multiple levels, that just trains you. It also gives you information to then innovate. And I believe there are certain industries that will not only survive but be latched onto, especially in times of turmoil. We can't live without water, we can't live without food, but we also can't live without information about threats out there, information about what's good that's going on. And so that's why I believe that even though we're going through, in the industry, growing pains about what the financial model is, what the technological future is, how do we protect people's privacy while also advertising to get revenue? All those are questions about how we get and distribute the information. It's not a question about whether the information is necessary. So if you can go out there and innovate, and if you can adjust to the changing technology and figure out ways to harness it, you're going to be a superhero. And all storytellers are superheroes anyway. It's just you're one of the well-rounded superheroes. So I think this is an incredibly important, essential time to get into journalism and media and storytelling. And I think it's a great time for SMAD majors to do that because of the technological skills and creativity that you've already been practicing in this program.
Hey, couldn't have said it better, and thank you so much for joining me, Ryan. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I hope to talk with you soon.
This has been a lot of fun. Thanks for asking me to do this, James.
Absolutely. And this is me, James Faris, signing off for the Madison Business Review.